Imagine how your body feels when you and your 60-plus brothers and sisters have not eaten for weeks. For Maggie Cook, this was a feeling she will never forget, living in the orphanage in Mexico where she grew up. With her adopted brother Poncho on her back for most of her own childhood, she made her own hoop and taught herself to play basketball, often whilst blindfolded, as Poncho told her where to move and shoot. Not only did Maggie develop her intuitive trust and acceptance, she became really, really good at basketball. She was also really good at making salsa, and after moving to the USA, Maggie was gifted $800 to start a salsa food company, which later sold for over $200 million. Maggie's story is one of inspiration and the power of positive thinking and using visualization not only to survive, also to thrive. Join us as we both discuss the importance of mental attitude and belief in ourselves and others to succeed. Have you ever had one of those gut-wrenching moments where life ground you to your knees and you found yourself asking in despair, why me? This podcast is all about sharing your stories and journeys, from asking why me to declaring this is why me. Discover how ordinary human beings like you and I have found their extraordinary levels of hope, courage, compassion, and provided a new perspective for greater potential and self-empowerment during their darkest defining moment. As a creative artist and coach myself, my guests and I discuss the interconnectedness of emotion and transformation in those moments, and how their actions then seize the opportunity for discovering their unfiltered and authentic voice, and ultimately their life's purpose. I invite you to join me each week as we share insights into how adversity can be turned into a unique advantage. Today's guest is Maggie Cook, CEO, keynote speaker, and author. Maggie was given a Nobel Entrepreneurial Prize in Mexico, Young Entrepreneur of the Year Award. She has been inducted into the Capital's Generation Next 40 Under 40 and the Hall of Fame at Charleston University, amongst many other accolades. Maggie helps others to create new opportunities in uncertain times, which we're all going through right now, and unleash their creative genius. Tips for how you can use your mind to transform your life. She has started a movement to solve the generational human sex trafficking and has a feature film released about her story, and so much more. Maggie is here today to share her story of overcoming adversity and challenges in her life, and how having belief in yourself, despite the obstacles in your way, you too can be successful in more ways than one. Welcome to the WhyMe podcast, Maggie.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're most welcome. So we always start with the big questions here first, which is, what was the first question you asked yourself this morning, Maggie?
The first question, well, the first thing that I do every morning, the very first thing is not a question, is they're statements. And I have affirmations. Even before I'm fully awake, I just say them in my mind. And it's a great start of my day. One of them is goes like this: the wealth of the universe is pouring over my life. Its wealth flows through me in bundles of abundance. All my needs, desires, and goals are manifested instantly by infinite conscious mind. I am one with everything. That's one of them. And I have three other ones that I go through. And it's basically, they're stating my future, my success, and a great start, because, one of the things that I talk about is when you wake up, and you can wake up moody sometimes, then the rest of your day goes bad.
Yes.
And one of the things that I love is that if you set your morning with habits, you take control of your life. You don't let life control you. And so those are the habits that I have. I will never change them, and are part of my habits for success, that with other different things, many different things that I do. But the moment that I wake up and it's not even fully awake, I know my mind is already telling me these are the things that you need to do. And I'm in bed, eyes closed, it's dark, and I'm just
Yeah.
starting my affirmations and I wake up beautifully to that.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm a big believer of winning your morning helps you win the day. And I've always loved that Jim Quick quote, you create your habits and then your habits create you. And that is what you're talking about here. It's
Mhm.
about setting up a routine to
Yes.
help you believe this is
Absolutely.
possible and start your morning to win the rest of the day. It's so, so important. I love
Yes.
that.
It's all about mindset,
It is all about mindset. And I know we're going to talk a lot about that in the podcast today. One more question I'd like to ask before we get into your story. What's the most influential book that you have read?
I would say the most influential would be The Mastery of Love by Don Miguel Ruiz. And that's actually the very first book that I've ever read that I read cover to cover.
Wow.
And I actually have 5 of them in my shelf, 5 of his
Do you?
books. And that's a book that I've actually recommended to family members and friends and anybody. It really connects you to who you really are and the power that you have and how to love yourself before you can love the world or the world can love you, or you can accept the world loving you. It's really powerful. And that's my favorite book.
I love that. Now, I had not heard of that book, and that is going to be added to my list of must reads.
Wonderful.
It is wonderful. Now, how about you share with us a little bit about your story?
So, my story starts in an orphanage in Mexico, in central Mexico, Michoacan. And I was born in an orphanage, and I have 68 siblings. And our caregivers adopted about 60 kids, and then there's another 200 other kids that lived there at once. And as you can imagine, I didn't know that I thought it was normal growing up, but the normalcy of having 2 caregivers and all those kids is just practically impossible for somebody to really, well, a kid to have the care and the upbringing that they need. So because of that, I had a lot of struggles in life and trying to figure out different things. The part that really affected my life was that you're a kid, you were born in this place, and you didn't have any other outlook in life, and you suffered so much. You received all kinds of abuse, mental, physical. You were afraid all the time. I was afraid of dying. And I grew up in a situation where I was a dreamer, so I created my escapes. And one of my escapes is I would either go to the mountains and pretend like I was a superhero, or I would dig caves with my knives into these canyons that were practically impossible to walk in. And the reason I did that is because I don't want anybody to find these places. And these were my secret hiding places for me to sort of rest and be away from everything else. And it was an escape. And it was certainly, I don't know if anybody listening to this has ever been hungry for 2 or 3 weeks. I mean, that is something I'll never forget, not having food to eat and then doing the things that, you could to become resourceful, which is what I started. I started hunting with my brothers in the mountains at night. We would use these spotlights and we would put it on the prey and we would throw nets and catch it and eat it out there. And so it was sort of like a total different life than what I've experienced, certainly moving here to the United States. And I never knew that I would have this opportunity. But I think that because of my mindset, and it's something that I established when I was young, there's one incident that happened to me when I was about 6 or 7 years old. And one of my caregivers was a doctor, and he would give medical attention to the poor every Sunday. And one Sunday, he was tending to the last pair of patients or people that were coming in, and there was a mother, and she had two kids. That was the last patient, and he came to me, and he said to me, can you tell how they're so poor? Can you tell why or how? And I said, no. And he says, look at their hair, so thin, they're malnourished. Look at their feet. They had chanclas, which is like flip-flop, but they're all like worn out, and their clothes were rough. And he grabbed me by the head and he said, I never want you to experience that. And he was passionate about helping the poor. And he was emotional when he did that. And then he went over to them and gave them a couple of pesos. And he said, here's some money for you to buy a taco and to pay for your bus ticket home, because they didn't have any money. And so I just, for some reason, looked at that. It was an eye-opening moment. And then I looked up to the sky, and it was a beautiful afternoon. And I said to myself, I am going to be somebody. Someday, I'm going to be something big. I'm going to come out of here, and I'm going to make a difference, and I'm going to help people. And this is me as a kid, and that's the moment, my defining moment, where I said to myself, I started thinking differently, and I started seeing myself as a super successful person, with long hair, except for I have short hair. And I was wearing a suit in my mind. I was wearing high heels, and I was behind a desk, a beautiful desk. And I started visualizing, and I started using goals. I started using affirmations. And it's something that completely changed my life, because later when I came here to the US, I started reading things like that in books. And I was like, wow, I've been practicing this all my life. And, come to find out, it's exactly the way that I manifested all my success, with tremendous success with my businesses. And so it's a sort of mentality. And, a lot of people here in the US ask me, they know my story. They've come to know me. They're like, I can't believe you didn't end up in jail or dead or on drugs or prostituting. How did you do that? And the truth is that we all have choices.
Yes.
And a lot of the people that I grew up with did end up either dead in prison or with cartels or with, all kinds of stuff. And we all have choices, and it's all about how we change the outlook that we have in life. And I have one habit that every single day, that if something bad happens, or if I have like a single little gut feeling of something bad, I'm able to be mindful and recognize that and change it around immediately. Mm-hmm. And by having that gift, because I put that habit within me, then there's no bad days, never. Even if something terrible happens, I'm still alive and breathing. And I'm very grateful and thankful for being and living in this moment and being here right now. Wow. And so that's where my story starts.
Without access to self-development podcasts, without access to the books to read about how to change your internal environment, how to use the power of visualization, you work this out all on your own from a very young age. Even within that environment of fear and everything, you have created a sanctuary within your internal environment. You have created habits of positive language. You have created a space where you know who you are and what you want. And it is so important to do that. And I honor you for being able to create that space and understand and harness that power, and everything else flows from that. Like you just said, there's never a bad day when you are grateful that we are here, alive, breathing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what happened next?
So what happened next was I always looked for something that I could do, or even be better at something in order to sort of give me a ticket, a way out, a ticket out of where I was living. And so I was always looking for things. And the thing that came up when I was in junior high, see, when I was growing up in the orphanage, we took schooling up to 6th grade. And then when we went to junior high, we started going into town, which was about 45 minutes away. And that's when I got introduced to basketball. And soccer back then was a big sport, but basketball was something newer. And I remember walking by my principal's office, and he literally had like a 5x8 concrete little building. And he had one of those black and white TVs that are really, really long and was up in the shelf. And Michael Jordan was playing. And I was like, wow, oh my gosh, who's this guy? And so I would stand in a window and in his doorway and watch him play. And I asked if I could come and watch when I was in recess or like between classes. And he said, yes. So by watching that, I started to pick up some moves and things for basketball that I just self-taught. So I started practicing. I got a little old basketball, and back then at the orphanage, we had a dirt court or a dirt, like a campo, and I made my own hoop, and I started practicing, and I would practice 4 to 6 hours a day. And I became so good, and because I got creative. I had a adopted brother. His name was Pancho, and he's one of those kids that we found in a dumpster because their parents threw him away. Oh. And he couldn't walk because he had spinal bifida. Mm-hmm. And so the way that we grew up was they would pair us with another kid. Like if you were younger, they would pair you up with an older kid to help. And then if you were older, you were paired up with a younger kid. So that week was life-changing for me. I had to carry him on my back every day. And then when I realized he could help me, I said, Pancho, do you want to do something? You want to try something? I want to try something. Do you want to play? He said, yes. So I took a rag and I wrapped it on my eyes to cover my eyes, and I started dribbling the ball. And I said, Pancho, if I get to the edge of this square, please tell me, because I could fall and break something or hit something. And he says, sure. So whenever I took the basketball, he would tell me, stop, turn. And I was just visualizing in my mind that I had multitudes of people coming at me, trying to steal the ball. And I was dribbling between my legs behind my back and turning and all kinds of stuff. And I got so good that by the time I graduated high school, we won all the national championships, and I got recruited to play basketball for the Mexican national team. Wow. In Mexico City. And they were there for the championship. And I was like, I thought, this is my ticket out, right? And I thought that was the greatest opportunity ever. I can leave, I can go. So we went to Mexico City. I got recruited, got a letter, and came back to the orphanage. And we didn't hear from them for about 3 months. And one day, one of our caregivers brought an American football to the orphanage, and we started to play, and we learned how to play it. And one of my brothers threw a really, really long pass, and I ran so fast, and I caught it in the air, and I fell to the ground, and I hit my shoulder on the ground, and I broke my collarbone. Right. And my caregiver, I went to my caregiver, and he pulled my shoulders backwards. He's a doctor. He was a doctor, and he told me, your dreams are over. And for someone like a doctor to tell you that your dreams are over, I was upset. I cried a little bit, but I felt like, no, there must be a reason. There's a reason why this happened. If this happened, I believe that something better. I just want to believe that something better. I was hopeful. Yeah. And so 3 days later, the Mexican national team called, and I couldn't go. And so that hit me a little bit, harder than the second time. Mm-hmm. But what happened was, I think 4 to 6 months, I can't remember exactly the time that I started to heal. And then our caregivers took a bus to tour the U.S. and to raise funds for the orphanage. And we got invited to a picnic in Charleston, West Virginia at a Catholic school. And when we pulled up, there was a bunch of people, there was balloons, they had this whole picnic set up. And I noticed there was a outdoor basketball court, one of those old ruggedy. Yeah. I saw a basketball, and my brothers and I were looking at it. And as soon as they parked the bus, we ran out, and I grabbed the ball, and we started to play. Well, there happened to be the coach of the University of Charleston, and she saw me play. And she told my caregiver who is that? And when she found out more, she said, I want her to come play for me on a scholarship. And that's the reason why I'm speaking to you today, because, one of the things that I often think about is a lot of people listen to doctors' advice literally it becomes believable that, your dreams are over. I mean, I'm not saying if somebody tells you you have cancer and you're going to die in 2 weeks, not try treatment, right?
Right.
But I really believe that mindset also manifests things, and what you're told can bring those things forward even quicker.
Yes.
So if I wouldn't have got up that day and played because I thought my dreams were over, I would never be speaking to you.
Such a powerful message. It's one that I understand on a lot of levels myself. I was an elite athlete in tennis. I was born with a bone disease in my knees, which made it very difficult to bend.
Wow.
And yet I got to play around Australia as a tennis player because we worked out there were ways we could work around that. And everything in sport, as you would know, is about visualization. So here you are watching Michael Jordan on telly and then creating that imprint of that video essentially in your head and mimicking and practicing and putting in all those hours. And life, everything about life is like that. And I've always felt very grateful for my upbringing as a sports person because you do have that mindset of I'm going to visualize it. And in tennis land, we call it shadow stroking. You see yourself doing the perfect technique and then you physically replicate it. And it is such an important part of this. And from another aspect, I was told at 29 years of age that from my severe respiratory issues, I had what they called difficult to treat asthma, not responsive to conventional treatment. And that was because I had a number of other conditions that weren't diagnosed at that time. They told me I wouldn't live past 30.
Wow.
And like you, my response was, oh, I don't believe that. I know I'm going to do so much in my life. I know there is more for me than a death sentence. And I'm 46 now. I'm 16 years past my apparent graduation date. And this is the power of mindset. And as you said, it doesn't mean don't seek treatment. Of course you seek treatment. The more of a seeker you are, the better opportunity you have in life because you're always going to be looking for the opportunity to research and experience anything that you think is going to help you. And it is so much about that belief and that knowing. And you said it earlier about any little bit of that gut feeling that comes up. I'd love for you to touch a little bit on that because that gut feeling is so important for how we believe in ourselves or how we fall prey to self-doubt.
Yes, that to me, the feeling part of you is the root to all manifestations. And I can say that from experience because before I started my business, I was practicing these things and I found research how emotion is such a powerful manifester. And I started applying it I created a course called Meditation Creator where people can create their own affirmations, powerful, specific affirmations, and turn them into meditations. And one of the most important thing that I talk about is the feeling. Because you can say, I'm a millionaire, or I have this, I have that, and then your body's telling you, your gut is telling you, no, you're a liar, right? But the biggest thing for me is what I've learned is that science now says that it takes 21 days to reprogram your subconscious mind.
Right.
And so when you use affirmations and you're putting this in your mind, you're not only putting these things in your mind, you are using your 5 senses. When you're saying, I own this beautiful home by the beach, you smell the air, you feel the feelings of being there, you hear the seagulls going, you hear the water splashing, you feel the wind in your skin, and you got chills, and you're just feeling this with intense emotion of whatever it is that you want. Yes. And the feeling part of it is really, I get to the point in my meditations that I cry, and the more emotional, that's why my course teaches people to put music, the most powerful music that moves you, because if you can move that type of emotion, what's going to happen to your mind? Your mind's going to be like, yes, I'm there. I'm living there right now. I'm here in this place. And that's really the miracle that a lot of people don't understand. That's the spark of mind over matter, manifesting the unseen into the seen.
Yes.
And certainly when you have a bad feeling, everything is energy as you know it. And when you feel bad feelings, that's an energy.
Yeah.
So it's important to recognize those. I recognize those by my gut feeling. Even in business, I love practicing this in business. If I get somebody, that want to do a deal with me or whatnot, if I feel my gut feeling telling me no, I respond to that and I don't take chances. I go with my gut feeling. That's what everybody should be doing, because your body's telling you the truth.
Yes.
And we can deny it with our minds, but it is very, very real. It's a very real, unseen thing that has the power to. We are so much more powerful than we think we are.
Oh, we so are. And that's why some of us call it the sixth sense, because and let's just, for example, take a meditation. Meditation is something that I talk about a lot. And I understand there are many different ways that you can do a meditation.
Absolutely.
And like you, I like to visualize the scene in front of me. I like to have music that moves me, and I like to be in touch. I'm wondering also, from your own point of view, I find that when I speak the positive words aloud, I'm reinforcing through my auditory channel as well. So repeating certain phrases like affirmations and things that I believe in, things that I want to be working towards, when I speak them, I then create that cycle. So it's a matter of speak, hear, process, speak, hear, process. And as you said, imagine the power of that coupled with the music that is moving your spirit, coupled with the visualization inside your head. So powerful. 21 days of that. I challenge everybody to give it a go for 21 days, to commit to doing this process, to feel how that changes you. And that gut intuition in business is something that a lot of people do not talk about. And I love talking about it, because my gut, on the times that I've not listened to it with important things, that's what got me into trouble. That's what got me in situations that I felt very trapped. When I have listened to my gut, and this podcast is a perfect example, I decided this is my medium. This is how people respond to the messages and the opportunity that I bring for people to learn, to get that awareness, and to hear amazing stories of people where they can relate, they can understand, they can connect on that emotional level and know that they are worthy, know that anything that they put their mind to in that thought process is a belief and is possible. Do you find people, do you find people when you talk about that gut intuition in business, do you find other people respond well to that?
I think that people who understand it are the people that come and reach out to me. And I have an affirmation that says, I'm only attracting the right people that I can help. Obviously, that's naturally going to happen, because if somebody doesn't want help or doesn't know how to get help, they're on their own journey. In their own time, they'll discover that. In talking about meditation, the way that I do my affirmations, I actually record them. And I make them very powerful, and I put music on them, and then I can live them. But everybody, and I love that you're encouraging this, everybody is a different type of learner and a different type of processor. And I'm working with one person that's manifesting a Grammy within several weeks just by doing the meditations. And she's just so excited. She's blown away by the process, and she's getting acknowledged by Warner Music and all these things. And she cannot meditate. And so she discovered that her own way, and I love it. And her own way is, she wrote her affirmations, she recorded them, she has music behind them, and she's a writer. And so she just writes and writes and listen to the meditations on loop. And that's the way that she can do it. And it's amazing. So everybody's different. And like you said, I love that you say there's so many different types of meditation for different things. And it's very true. The biggest thing that I would say with meditation or with business or with whatever you're doing is to ask one simple question. And that question is, what is my intention?
Yes.
Because when you are focused on answering that question, then you have clarity, you have purpose, you have direction, and you know exactly the outcome of what you want and what you're going to get. And so it's very powerful to have knowledge and understanding of that and be aware of that with everything that you do.
Yeah, clarity of your purpose allows you within everything that's going to be around you. It allows you to see those opportunities that will serve that purpose. Without that clarity, if you've got a chaotic brain going on in there, if you like, and there's all these things jumping in and there may be lots of opportunities around you, but if they're not the ones that are going to serve you and you're not aware of that, you don't have the clarity and vision and end goal in sight, then you end up taking things that distract you rather than help you achieve those goals. Such a powerful process. I would like to know a little bit more about your business, because that in itself is a monumental journey. Yes.
So when I came to the US and I went to college and I graduated college, I couldn't find a job. The industry that I picked there's only 2 companies that had that type of industry where I was living. And so I became homeless. And I lived in my car for a few months, and then my engine blew up. My car broke down, and I just started living in the woods and in the streets. But I didn't even know I was homeless, because that's how I lived in the orphanage. I lived in the woods, and it was fun. It was okay.
It was what you knew.
It's what I knew. And so I think it happened that after I was homeless for a little while, somebody found me on the street, and it was someone that I had met at the university. She was one of the cooks for the university, and she said, "What are you doing? I can't believe you're in the street. You shouldn't be doing this." And so she got me a place to stay. And then within weeks, somebody entered me into a salsa contest for the state. And the reason that happened is because when I was in college, my friends, I used to make a Mexican salsa, pico de gallo. Yeah. I would make this for them, and they would go crazy. And so they would tell my teachers, and then my teachers would have me bring it to class. And so it became a big thing for the college. And so I got entered, and I won the whole contest for the state by unanimous vote. And then I thought, maybe this is my aha moment. I went to school for interior design, but I just won this huge salsa contest, and maybe I have something here. What's interesting that when I was at the event, somebody gave me $800 to start my business out of the blue. Wow. And he said that he would help me in one condition, because he saw how on fire I was about this product. And he says, as long as you pay it forward someday when you become successful. So I started my business, and I went through a lot of different struggles. And, fresh salsa back then wasn't known. It was sort of like a disruptive product. And so I started the journey of just Googling and finding out how to make salsa and finding out how to build a business. And I got so many rejections from supermarkets when I call them. One of my biggest rejections was 90 stores in a row told me no.
90 stores in a row said no. Oh my goodness. Maggie, if that isn't determination to keep going, I don't know what is. What a fantastic story already. And I can tell you there is so much more coming up in this interview.
It's Vera-Lee from Australia, the founder of the WhyMe Movement and podcast. Well, one idea, one vision, one person. This self-funded podcast and movement has started to take a life of its own, which is exactly where I had planned it would be. To hear the stories of the far-reaching impact across many countries in this world, it humbles me to know that my vision is shared, understood, and positively influencing people to look at the changes they can make for their own adversity and how they can find the strength, the courage to be inspired and feel connected and empowered to use their adversity to their advantage. One of the best ways that you can help support the WhyMe Movement and podcast is to subscribe to the various channels, such as the podcast platform you are listening to this on now and the YouTube channel, which has much bonus content released. By subscribing, you will make sure that you are one of the first to find out who is coming up next, more about our guests, and the interesting questions that I ask them, which do not get released on the podcast platforms, and lots of other good bonus content. I always love reading your comments, and so please feel free to leave them on each of the platforms. The beauty of social media is that you can easily share single episodes or any of that bonus content from YouTube onto your own social media platform with your friends, which helps to bring this positive, inspiring message to far more people, allowing you to be an active participant in the WhyMe movement and vision. On Apple Podcasts, it always makes a big difference if you can leave a rating, review, and subscribe to the show. Let's get back to today's story.
I was cold calling the stores and I was so afraid because I've never done it. And so I decided to change my approach. So I had listed the stores from smallest to the largest, and I turned the list upside down at the top to change my approach because it wasn't working. The largest organic retail in the United States was Whole Foods. So I called them, I left a message, and they called me the next day, and he said, "Is this Maggie?" I said, "Yes." He says, we heard about you, want to know more, can you come? And I said, "Sure. When do you guys meet?" And he says, "Tomorrow at 9 a.m. And I was about 8 hours away, and it was 6 p.m. So I went to my kitchen and made salsa, and I drove all night, got there at 9 a.m., presented the products, and they went crazy for the products. And he said, "When can we have them?" And I said, "Well, how much do you need?" And at that time, I was making about 250 pounds of salsa and just selling it to friends. And their first order was for 10,000 pounds of salsa.
Wow.
1 ton of salsa. So I literally went from, I was making about $12,000 that year. And I went from making that to 1.9 million.
Oh my goodness.
Because, the first thing that happened was they asked for such a big order and I didn't have any money because the banks won't loan me money. Yeah. So I got a contract, and the contract showed that they would pay me every week. So I borrowed $20,000 from friends, and I said, "I'll pay you in a week, and here's the contract, look." And so within the first week, they paid me $40,000, and I returned the 20, and then I just started reinvesting, and that's really when the journey began. Yeah. And I then, continued with my meditations and my affirmations, and I manifested some of the biggest supermarkets in the world just by the meditation of it. I created this very powerful affirmations and meditations. Within 29 days, I received the call. I had bought a house by then. And I received the call in my office, and I did the same process. I visualized the largest supermarket, and I didn't specify which one because of the universe. If God can give me, I don't want any limitations. So they called me and they said, "Is this Maggie?" And the lady was a lady on the other line. And I said, "Yes." She says, "We were looking online. We were looking at 10 different salsa companies, and we thought yours was the best. Do you want to sell your products from Walmart?" Just like that. And just I got up from my chair and I went to down the hall, and I told my partner, I said, "It's Walmart. They want our products." She said, "It's a prank. Hang up." and I was like, "Wait a minute. I've been asking for this, and it's coming. It's here. within a month, I was in Bentonville, Arkansas, shaking the hand of the most powerful guy that controls all the Sam's Clubs and Walmarts in the country, just like I had visualized. I had chills just thinking about it in my meditations, in my affirmations. And suddenly we were across the nation with our products, and we had to scale very quickly. Mm-hmm. And that was really the biggest breakthrough for me. And then in 2015, my company sold with Garden Fresh for $231 million. And that's, starting out being homeless and with $800 and just scaling little by little and really figuring out what to do. Mm. And this is one of the things that I love doing. What I'm doing now is there's a lot of entrepreneurs that are stuck where I was and nobody would help me. Mm. And so now I have the opportunity. I used to touch people with my products, with the taste, they love them. And that's how it grew. Now I can touch people differently because I can help them scale their company so they can make a greater impact for the world. And I can do it in such a massive way. And it's something that I really, really, really enjoy doing. It's very much aligned with an understanding of my greater purpose, which is understanding my why I'm here.
So important. There are so many things. I've been jotting down a couple of keywords here that I would like to talk about. Throughout everything that you've spoken so far, passion keeps coming up. You had your caregiver, the doctor, holding you in by your head with passion, saying, I don't ever want you to be like this in this poverty. Without that passion in that moment, that may not have had such a big impact on you. Passion is so important because when you're out playing basketball, that person, that selector saw your passion, saw your ability, saw your mindset essentially. You were then picked up. All of these opportunities have happened because you've had that passion, that drive, and that clarity of purpose. And I absolutely adore that. Within that, your why goes so wide and yet so narrow. Understanding your why as a person is the key to everything, isn't it?
Yes.
And knowing who you are at your core, despite your environment, despite your circumstances, being so in touch with that belief that you have so much to offer the world, despite the fact that you're out there living in the woods, essentially homeless. It touches my heart. I have tears in my eyes. I'm feeling so touched by hearing your story from you because so many people go through hardship in their life. So many people have an environment that is not supporting and lifting them up. And what you have done is you have taken your ability to visualize, you have taken your ability to create that internal environment, to believe in yourself, to believe and have passion, and to want to help people. And the fact that now, once you have become successful, you are giving back so much, to me, that is key from your upbringing, from everything that you have gone through to create that gratitude, to create that mindset of, you know what, I have made it, if you like. I am successful. I don't have to do this. I want to do this. This is my why. And I wanted to touch a little bit on some of the other words you used. You said that when you created your product initially, it was quite disruptive to the market. It wasn't something that was widely out there accepted. And from this disruptive action and thought, you have created a phenomenon, essentially. I believe in history, if we look back, so many people that have taken disruptive action have changed the world. And there again is a gut feeling that you knew this was a path to take and you stood by that, and therefore you focused on the end goal. And I think you have achieved amazing success because of that vision and because of who you are. And I am so honoured to be talking to you today.
Thank you. Likewise. I really believe that with a disruptive product comes some challenges because initially there's a lot of resistance. There's a lot of resistance to change, a lot of resistance to like new. So, so overcoming that and just continue on the journey and keep moving forward. That's when the really big breakthroughs happen. And that's one of the things that I've learned.
Yes. And see, I'm hearing a parallel here with the way that you have been talking about meditation too, because what you're doing is just saying, hey, let's get this music that moves you. That's disruptive. Disruptive doesn't need to be negative. Disruptive means change. And when we are open to change, possibilities are so infinite.
Yes, absolutely.
Do you know, the other thing I wanted to come back to, and we have spoken about a lot along the way, trust. Let's go back to you on the basketball court with the blindfold on, with your brother on your back. As soon as you were talking about that, I'm visualizing that in my head, because this is what I do as well. I'm an artist. Everything is visual in my internal world. And straight away I could see this. And I was so moved by that vision, because the trust that you put in each other is immense. And having that trust, and not only trust in yourself, trust in someone else, how important has that moment and that experience been throughout the rest of your journey with respect to trust?
Well, I will tell you one thing, that I did hit my head on the pole and started bleeding.
Oh, no.
Because I was drilling so good, he thought I was looking. But I kept doing it anyway.
Yeah.
You know, I was trusting, but it was more of just wanting to be the best that I could, the best person with a skill to move a basketball. And, but it goes all with trusting the journey, you know, and not giving up, continuing to move forward. And trust has also with it a gut feeling. And that, you know, you come across a business owner and they want to do business with you, you know, do you trust them? One of the things that I did with my business is, if I had people like that wanted to come in and partner up, and I would tell them, you know, very upfront, straightforward, you know, I am going to trust you, but know that if anything would ever happen and I lose your trust, I will never do business with you ever again if something happens. And it's very clear, but, you know, having such high standard in what your values are, you also attract the same type of values, and you know with your gut feeling if they're the right person for you or not. And the reason why that happened is because my business partner had a totally different energy than I did, and the attraction of that part was coming from a different direction. And people would tell, you know, I'd had people that would come into I had a 20,000 square foot manufacturing facility, and they would come into the building and they would look at me and they would stop and they would be taken back. Wow, you're the owner? And then my partner would come around the corner and they'd be like, oh, who is that? Just by looking at a person, they could feel the energy, the difference. And they're like, oh my gosh, you know, and I acknowledge that. And, you know, but with business, I knew when employees, team members came to work, they were interested in working with me. I knew if they would work out or not, but I still gave them the benefit of the doubt, but with certain systems in place. You know, for example, I would create a document that they would sign. I would say, okay, all these things are expected. Do you understand them? Do you understand that they're easy to follow? It's easy to work here. It's an environment of great positivity. If these are not met within a month, we'll review it every single week with you. If they're not met, then you're signing here saying that you're not going to be able to work here. And it was totally understandable. And by the end of the 30 days, they knew if they had performed or not. They knew it, and they had no problem walking out the door because the expectations were very clear. And I knew, but I still want to give people an opportunity because this is something that I saw a lot in my company. And is that when somebody came in and they didn't want to work initially, the energy of the environment would uplift them and it changed their life.
Wow.
So if it was an opportunity for them to change their life by the energy that we were putting out, then yes, I want to give somebody an opportunity. I'll give you an example. When I started my business, I didn't know about hiring people. And so I just started bringing people in. And I remember this one girl, she came in and she was very energized. She was happy and everything. She was ready to work for us. And I was actually impressed by her energy. And we got an interview. I hired her. Well, the next day when she came in, she was sitting on the table. She was bent over like this. She had a backwards hat. She looked like she was in a terrible attitude. And I went to her and I jumped and I said, "Come on, Melissa. This is what we're going to do. Here's what you're going to copy me. We're going to do boxes." So we would take these boxes, cardboard boxes that were folded because that's how they came out from the manufacturer. We take these boxes and put them up, and I could tape the bottom of them in 3 seconds. I could square them, you fold them, tape the bottom in 3 seconds. Now push it to the line. And I said, if you can beat me, I'm going to challenge you. If you can beat me, I'm going to be very impressed. So she just jumped and started taping boxes until one day she did beat me. And the really cool thing that happened was that when somebody else new came, she did the same thing without me even telling her. She challenged someone. So what happened was that this is a funny story. What happened was when my company grew, I actually had to move to another facility, in another city. And so I offered all my team members to come with me, but some of them had family in that city and they didn't want to move. So I made sure that they all, got jobs, and I got them, helped them in every way that I could. And months later, after I had moved, months later, maybe 6 months or so, her mom calls me and she's laughing on the phone. And I said, "Is everything okay?" And she's just laughing. And she says, "You're not going to believe it." I said, "Yeah, tell me." She says, "Melissa just got a job." She got a job a couple of months ago, and she's with this company. It's a sausage company, and she works with all men. And she's their top wiener catcher. She's catching these big wieners, and she's like outdoing all the men. And she's laughing, and I said, "Well, why is she laughing?" She's like, "And she's gay, and she's the wiener catcher." And she started laughing, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!" But see, the moral of the story here is that it didn't matter even if people knew she was gay and she was the wiener. She didn't listen to the world. She had this passion and this energy. And it's something that I was able to witness, that I was able to pass to someone, that ethic, that work, and somebody changed. And they were able to take that to better their life somewhere else and get, a raise and be higher up in a company. And so that's why I always gave people the trust and the benefit of the doubt with the conditions that, this is what we're looking for. And we would love to have you. And I had people that didn't work out that came back and begged for the job. But the only condition that I had was, we would meet with the entire team in one room. And I would tell the team, "Listen, guys, this person really wants to be back. Do you guys as a team, knowing what we have, would you want this person back?" And if they said no, then I would really respect the team. I would really never hire someone again if it was someone that had a really negative attitude, because it's harvested, it grows in the environment. So that was the only time that I would give somebody the opportunity to come back in, as if the team approved it. And they wouldn't have to be in front of the team. The team would just have to tell me, because I want that environment to continue to grow, that culture to continue to be extremely positive. And, that's how it grew. And all my team members grew into being thinking managers, thinking owners. What would Maggie do? And that's sort of the mentality that we had. And for any kind of new development that saved us money that somebody came up with, they got bonuses, and that's how they were so on fire and passionate. I had team members that would tell me, "Can I stay here? I don't want to go home." "Why not?" because the environment is terrible. Can I just stay here? And I would be like, well, you can't stay here, you know? Although I was living in the plant, I had a bed in my office because when we got the Walmart contract, we were producing products 24 hours a day. So if there was a situation where, you know, somebody needed me, then they could just knock on the door and I would wake up and help out. But yeah, it's all about, you know, everything's energy. I used to go into the center of the huge production plant in the morning before everybody got there, and I would open my arms and I would look up and I would breathe and I would meditate and I would see this light coming into me from the top of my head and then coming out of me from my heart, and it would cover the entire square footage of the plant, and it would bless and send light to all the products, all the team, all the resources, everything. It was just flow out of me, and I was just sort of enveloped in this energy of everything that I'm doing right now is touching everyone else and also the world, because it is what it is. You know, the thing is, every single product that came out of there went to 38 different states. So we were everywhere. Our energy was, you know, going everywhere. So I wanted to make sure that we were always in that mindful state of, and my team, they were so awesome. They found out I had a book and they bought it. They all bought the book and they were reading, oh my gosh, I can't believe you did this. And they would quote my book to me. And I would be like, that's so awesome, you know, and we just build on each other. And it was such a great environment. You know, I had my mom visit from the orphanage one day, and she was in my office, and one of the team members knocked on the office, and his name was Lonnie, and he came in and he says, can I tell you something? I said, yeah. And he touched my shoulder and he says, Maggie, I just want to let you know that outside somebody threw beer bottles and broke a bunch of beer bottles against our building. And I just want to let you know that I clean them up for you, okay? And I said, thank you, Lonnie. That's awesome. And he left. And I pat him on the back. I gave him a hug. My mom was like, mouth open and looking at me. Oh my gosh, she said, they really care about you. And I said, you know, Mom, that's my real family. And she cried.
Yeah.
And it's something that I never had, but something that I was always hopeful for and always wanted to.
Yeah.
And to me, family is not necessarily mean like blood family. Family, you can create a family from the energy that you put out and the people that you attract. And those are the true culture and the family that you build with who you are, what you put out to the world.
Yeah. In Australia here, we call that our work family. And we literally use that term because the people who you include in your family are the people that you trust, the people that have your back and you have theirs. And I love that collaborative process that you've just described. It is so important for not only you to trust your employees, but your employees to trust you. And the fact that you know, describing that situation of, okay, this person, they left, they're begging to come back. Do you all think this is going to work? Putting that level of trust in your team, that's what allows them to shine, because they go, you know what? She cares what we think. She cares about the energy of everybody in this room. She cares about us as a family. Mm-hmm. And to have that approach, it's no wonder that your business has been so successful, because that, for me, is the epitome of good management and good leadership.
And that's one of the things I teach, you know, and I talk about culture, how important it is, because I tell leaders that everything, I tell them, I'm very honest, if your culture is terrible, is because the leadership is terrible, and we need to do something with the leadership in order to change everything that escalates from there. And it's where where the seed is, you know, where's the tree, branches.
Yeah, and that's right. I mean, let's go back to Melissa, the example that you used for a moment. You planted a seed in her. That first day, she's looking depleted, her energy's down, and you're thinking, what's going on here? You created a simple, fun little competitive game that she has continued to rise to, and then pass that on to everybody else. So planting that one little seed in that one person has manifested into so many trees in a whole forest.
Mm-hmm.
And
Absolutely.
I love that, because a lot of us, when we're in the thick of challenges, when they're in the thick of what's going on in our lives, and there might be chaos, there might be depression, there could be all sorts of states that we find ourselves in with what's going on in our lives. Sometimes we forget to be aware that the smallest, what could almost be considered insignificant acts of kindness or caring can have a profound impact on people for the rest of their lives.
Absolutely.
I am so touched by so many elements of your story, but again, I feel this connection, and this is something that I've discussed with so many of my guests who have come on here. We're in different parts of the world, and yet I'm feeling your energy, and it's incredible. And I am loving this interview because so many people who hear this are going to be sparked into action. They are going to think disruptive. Yes, disruptive can be good. I can do this. Maybe they will implement the 21-day challenge to, I love your idea of actually recording your own voice. It's interesting because, if I can just share, I have created some visualizations for people who don't know how to meditate, who say, I can't meditate. I don't get it. I can't do it. All these thoughts come into my head, and I'm like, okay, well, I will create a little series of meditations that are visualizations that you don't need to think about that. You can just listen and immerse yourself in the process. And I listen to those myself. And people laugh at me when I say that. And I say, well, why not? That's my voice. Mm-hmm. We respond to the human voice. And more than anything, we respond to the human voices that we know. Mm-hmm. And the fact that you do that and you teach that, and it does work.
Absolutely. I've had many, in my book, I talk about many stories of manifestation and the power of what I've done. And I'll give you an example. I was telling you earlier that my business partner back then had a different energy than I was. We were kind of the polar opposite. And I was meditating one day in my office, and I was crying, and I was visualizing I had tears in my eyes, and I was seeing myself there, and I was so successful and much more money and abundance coming in. And in the middle of my meditation, she comes in the office. And it was very embarrassing because the first thing that happened, she laughed at me. And she said, "What are you doing?" And laughed at me and then left. And then the Walmart thing happened, right? And she saw my vision boards and my everything that I had. And one day she walks in the office, and I came in early, so nobody knew I was there. And my door was slightly open a little bit. And my management team came in, because my office was in the back, and then there's a team, and then there's the door that you go in at the other end. My business partner walks in, and she says, "Is Maggie here?" And they're like, "No, we don't know." And I was like, what's going to happen? What is she going to say? So I got up slowly, like not to make any noise. And I got by the door and I put my ear, and she starts talking to my management team. And she says, "Guys, I have to tell you something. Maggie does this weird thing where she cries and she meditates, and she's got all these vision boards, and everything comes true, including the car, the nice Ferrari that's parked downstairs, including she meditated that and it came true. Yeah. Can you believe it?" And I'm like, yes, I'm behind the door going, yes, she believes. I made her a believer. It is so powerful and it's so real. Yeah. The same thing happened with my family when they visited. They saw my vision boards. Next time they saw me, I had all the things that I had put on there, and my affirmations, everything. So it's very powerful, because what happens is the power comes from one thing, and is focus. Yeah. So when you focus on something that you truly want, the stronger the focus and the intention of having it becomes the source for the manifestation. Because, for example, let's say if you wanted to manifest a red convertible Ferrari or any kind of car, right? and you're visualizing and you're smelling the air while you're driving it with the top down, and you're hearing the engine, it's vibrating your entire body, and you're grabbing the wheel and you're hearing the sound, and it's just, and you're enjoying the wind hitting your hair and all these things, right? And I call that actually inspired action. When you actually go and get the car, just rent, get it from the dealership and drive it. That's even more powerful.
Yeah.
But just the process of that, the focus of that, what you get is that all of a sudden, because you begin to manifest the places, the people, the circumstances, because all of a sudden you start seeing every red car just like it that's passing you that you never noticed. But now you are noticing it because you're focusing on it so much with intention. And that's really what happens. You're noticing all the opportunities and the things that you're wishing for. And it's you create the miracles that way. I call it miracle creating.
You do create the miracles that way. And if you think about having a dream, let's say that you've had this really intense dream and you've woken up, it still feels right. It still feels real to you. Our brain doesn't fully understand the difference between reality and what we create within our mind sometimes. And our body will still respond. So I can remember dreams. I've woken up and I am hysterically crying, or I am screaming out in fright, or I am laughing my head off because my body is reacting to what my brain is creating. And it is so important to have that awareness of your focus, of your vision, of your purpose, to have that clarity, to be aware then, like you said, you never noticed all these red cars before. It's that awareness. And when you're manifesting that in a vision, then it becomes more real. And that is actually a very simple process to have that real. Yeah.
It is. But I will tell you one thing, and this is, you're absolutely right. But the thing to consider here is that your subconscious mind is so powerful.
Yes.
So that's why you have to be, it's clear and specific with your asking, because your subconscious mind doesn't know the difference. If you say, I want to manifest, I want to be rich, or I want to manifest a lot of money, the subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between $1 or $1 million. So you might get the dollar and it manifested, right? But you're like, where's my money?
Yeah.
So that's why you have to be very specific in your asking. And I do a process of declaring your divinity, which is I am. And then I bring things like gratitude, so grateful and thankful. And then I bring now that this moment, I am gratefully, I put a joy, and then experiencing action verb, whatever that action, whatever you choose, this situation or this thing. And then I say by this date, because the brain loves dates. And then I always say, or something better. Why? Because I don't want to limit myself.
Yeah.
If God or the universe has something even better or bigger, I want to be open to that.
Yeah.
And so that's really how, as far as clear and specificity, you can even talk about colors within your affirmation. You can talk about all these things. But once you've written and recorded your affirmations, while you're listening to them, you get to enjoy them, but you also get to use your five senses and feel those things like you're already there, which makes it powerful. But that clearness
absolutely does.
and the specificity is so important.
Yes, that's right. It's such a good example. What's the difference between $1 and $1 million or $1 billion to our subconscious? And that sometimes if we're not clear in our focus, we can be receiving the rewards and just not recognize that that's what they were. Oh, I didn't realize that, I got that dollar, but I didn't realize that was that manifesting because I wasn't
clear about that. And then you're confused, but it's because your brain is confused.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, very much so. One more thing I wanted to talk about was you've mentioned a few times about crying and even how your business partner reacted to that the first time and how that came full circle in the end. It actually works. I think that is a process that for some people is uncomfortable, being comfortable in crying. And it's something that I was very uncomfortable doing. I had gone through a domestic violence relationship. I'd gone through a lot of sexual assault within that. I'd gone through extreme bullying, both in workplaces and in schooling and all sorts of things. And so I came to a point in my life where I started some group therapy of other survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault. And I actually made the conscious choice to allow myself to cry in front of other people. It was something I'd been teased about most of my life up until that point, that I was like a crybaby. I wore my heart on my shoulder so much that crying interfered with me doing so many things. And so I'd shut that part of myself down.
Mm-hmm.
And then in this group with women that I trusted, because we'd earned each other's trust, knowing that I was safe in that environment. And at that point, I hadn't verbalized a lot of what the traumas that had happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
I used my artwork to share that. And then I shared that and I cried and it was okay. And that was such a pivotal moment for me that now I talk to people and I say, you know, when I'm presenting to people, when I'm talking, when I'm sharing my powerful story, and I know how powerful it is, and I know how inspired people are every time that they hear parts of my story, I allow those tears to flow. My tears have flowed during this interview. They've flowed during almost every interview. And I say to people, I love that, because we are human, and to be in touch with that awareness, that level of awareness of emotion, it is so powerful, and tears are okay. They're good.
Yes, absolutely. And I completely agree with you. One of my challenges that I had, which wasn't really a challenge, was an opportunity, because I turn all my challenges into opportunities.
Yes.
Was when I share my story from the beginning. I've shared my story, but when I get real and really, speak about the struggle, just, use it for inspiration. I had several of my family members that I grew up with contact me directly and says, don't talk about those things. Don't post about that because it takes me back. Or somebody told me, what are they going to think about us? And my opportunity was, it's not for the purpose of diminishing us. It's for the purpose of me uplifting and help people that are there or have been there. The biggest thing that I've found, that it's one of my greatest assets when I speak publicly around the world, is the power of vulnerability.
Yes.
Because when you're vulnerable, you have this great connection, and that's what you need. You need to connect to people in order to be able to share your message, in order to really be able to reach them and touch their heart. And you do that by sharing that story. I was on stage one time and I was speaking in front of thousands of, it was an insurance conference for insurance, companies. And I was talking about my story and I was talking about how my father never acknowledged my success, and because of certain things, and he didn't acknowledge that, and it was so hard because, and then I realized I didn't need his approval, right? Because I trusted myself. I just wanted to be happy. And after I speak, I always open up conversation. People ask me questions and I get very vulnerable. And I said, please ask me, because I really want to answer your question and connect with you. And this executive from a 500 Fortune 500 company stands up and asks me, did your father, after he became successful, like truly successful, did he ever acknowledge you? And I'm bawling on stage. And I said, yes, he did. He says, a week before he passed, he wrote me this very powerful letter telling me how proud he was of me. And I'm just sitting there bawling, and all the crowd is bawling, but I'm telling the story. And I got approached at the end of the conference. The event planner that hired me, she came up to me in tears. She says, we underpaid you. Because it's the power of vulnerability, of connection. And that's what you've done, with showing who you really are and being in a place that, and I'm not afraid of being vulnerable, of sharing these things at all. Like if anything comes up that I need to share, I always know that I've attracted that environment and that I'm ready to share when the time is right, if the questions are asked, and how the conversation is flowing organically, just like we are, talking today.
Yeah, I love that. And there again, there's that disruptive process in a positive way. And we know, as people who have grown within ourselves and have grown within the people we're attracting, in the types of people, the types of mindset, the manifestation of everything that is going to help support that vision, there is change that is necessary. And yet it is so important to stay true to everything in your experiences that got you to be who you are and where you are right now. And there goes my tears again.
Well, I will tell you that every challenge and every adversity that I've ever had is my greatest gift.
Yeah.
It truly is, because it allows me to be able to tell my story, you know, and I see no matter how bad or how hard it was and how many times I felt like I was going to die or I was fearful, it was my greatest gift. My life is my greatest gift. How I grew up, there's no accidents, and I'm very happy with that.
Yeah.
With my journey, for the reason that I'm here living on this time in this place.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm feeling so grateful to have had you on here, and I'll share a little something with you. It was only in April this year that I finally have stepped into the public arena, if you like. Prior to that, my Facebook profile that I have now is quite new. Prior to that, I was under a different name, and Facebook closed down that account because I wasn't willing to use my real name. It was my name that I was known as. People in this town see me in the supermarket and they call me by that name. However, because I couldn't produce a driver's license that had that name on it, they shut it down. And I said, okay, fine. And I spent 18 months off any social media. And throughout that time that I had been on there, I'd been sharing my story with many people. However, it was never in a big public arena. I'd gone and done talks in front of premiers and groups of people because I knew that it was a contained space, that I was technically safe. And in April this year, it was actually the end of January that I got back onto Facebook. In April this year, I changed my name to who I really am. And I cut that last tiny bit of fear that I had of any consequence of sharing my story from my ex-husband. And I don't know where he is, which is a good thing. But that was something that I had held on to, and that had held me back. And I was sort of conscious of it. However, in April, when I did that and I said, you know what? I am starting a movement. I am going to share my story, because every time I do, people are inspired. They are touched. They feel that disruption. They then make that choice to change something in their life that they've wanted to change, to do something that they didn't feel confident doing or they weren't trusting themselves to do. And since I've done that, and since I've started this podcast, and as I said, it only launched yesterday, the response has been phenomenal, and it is worldwide. And I couldn't be more pleased, because everything in my life and the space that I'm in now, I am fully free. I've finally said to myself, no limitations. And look at what happens. I mean, this is what you're saying. All my life I've practiced certain elements of that, but I have fully stepped into no limitations in April this year, and everything is just taking off. And I'm like, this is what it's about. It's that trust. It's that trust in the universe. It's that trust in yourself. It's that trust that when people were prophesying over me, when I literally could not verbally speak for a 2-year period, that I would speak life and I would speak to so many people across the globe. And my conscious thought went, how can I do that? I don't even have a voice and I may never get my voice back. And here I am doing exactly that, because I said, you know what? I am going to listen to that. I am going to believe that. And I know that I have so much to share. And in fact, when I share my story, I have many defining moments in my life. And one of those was waking from a coma. When I went into that coma, my body had already started shutting down. I could feel that process happening. And when I went under, I had a vision and I was told, you're going to be okay. And my thought response to that was, I have so many people to touch. And that was what I hung on to. And the power of that, I woke from the coma that people did not expect I could.
Wow.
You know, there's so much that we can do. And you are one person. And look what you have done. You've impacted so many millions of people and will continue to do so. And I adore that.
Thank you.
I thank you so much for sharing your story. I'd like just to talk a little bit about how people can contact you if they would like to, and about your website.
Yes, they can reach me. My website is maggiecook.com. It's Maggie with one G, COOK. And if anybody wants to talk to me, they can go to meetmaggie.com, Maggie with one G, meetmaggie.com, and they can schedule a call with me. And I'm on social media, Maggie Cook, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, all the channels, most of the channels. And people can reach out to me there, and would love to connect.
Wonderful. And I will make sure I put those links in the show notes. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me and sharing your story too. It's wonderful.
So many strong visualizations. The one that struck me the most was that moment you walked out into the warehouse and you had that light beaming through your head and coming out through your heart. It is something I relate to so strongly, and I just have such a strong visual of that, and just beautiful. Thank you for sharing, for your transparency, your vulnerability, and for being the person who you are. You're amazing.
Thank you, and likewise.
Thank you. Well, another story, more WhyMe moments, and more reasons to feel inspired to change your adversity into your advantage. An integral part of the vision of the WhyMe movement is the ICE acronym, I's for Inspire. When you feel inspired, you are more likely to take action. C is for two things, actually. Connection. You are not alone in this world. There are always people here who want to help you get through your adversity and feel positive about your life and your purpose. It is also for courage. Courage, in my opinion, is feeling the fear and doing it anyway. And there lies the importance of connection. For sometimes we don't feel we have the courage to do things on our own. And yet once we have the emotional support of those people who we trust, it can help us to feel that fear and do it anyway. And lastly, the E is for empower. When we have that connection and the courage and the inspiration to know, get our clarity of purpose, well, that is when we feel empowered to take the action that we want to do to change some aspect of our lives for the better. If you would like my personal support in this area to help you get through adversity in your life, you can contact me at Vera-Lee Original on social media.